Life's a game, the world's a stage, and we are merely role players. I'm Matt. I'm your host for this Backstage episode from our studio production, The Feed, although I was not the host during the show. And I'm joined here by our other two housemates from the Weird Big Brother house.
Hello, I'm Ellen.
Introduce yourselves, starting
Jake.
with Ellen.
And I'm Josh, and I was playing Sloan influencer Henry.
And I, of course, was playing boring teacher Malcolm. So first thing to say is this is the first game that we've played on Merely Roleplayers. First of all, the first one that was video rather than pure audio. And second of all, the first game we've played that can be played asynchronously. So that didn't require everybody who was playing it to be free at the same time to have a session and be online all at the same time. And it is kind of telling that it's taken so long to then get the three of us together at the same time for a post-show recording. Yeah. How did we find the kind of... because this is literally the first time any of us have actually spoken verbally about this game. We did all of the organization for it over text, and then all of the videos, obviously, we recorded by ourselves. How was that experience?
I mean, extremely convenient. Extremely convenient. It was interesting because I think I missed the kind of playoff that you get when you're in the same room with somebody or on the same video chat as somebody. But it was quite nice to have time between to like develop ideas, and it felt like time had actually passed in the house, which kind of just made it a bit more real, I guess.
It made the dynamic of sort of talking about other players behind their backs feel a bit more realistic because they weren't sitting in the room. And if you were sort of bitching and whinging about another one of the characters or one of the NPCs, you know that they wouldn't see it until like the week of upload. So, and when you're on the reciprocal end of that, it was very strange to be like, oh, stupid Jake talking about me like that. I'm going to get him on the next video. It was kind of interesting. I guess the game is about, you know, everybody's in the house together, but when they go into the diary room, that's when they have their own sort of private moments. And so being separate from everybody and sitting in this chair miles away from you guys recording it, it helped to kind of make it feel a bit sort of separate and isolated, which was nice.
Yeah, definitely good to just be able to kind of think about things on your own time, record when it's convenient for you, rather than trying to record like find a time that's good for everybody at the same time. I should say the game we were playing is Unreal by Josh Fox at Black Armada Games. So credit to the asynchronous rules to them. We have an announcement to make in this video, which is who actually won Big Brother in our story, because of the way the end game of Unreal works, it may not be completely obvious to anybody just watching the videos at home. So would the winner of this weird series of Big Brother like to reveal themselves?
Did not see that coming.
Jay! It's so fitting.
Just
crazy old prankster.
Given everything that we established about Jake and kind of about what the audience were thinking about Jake, even in things like the video descriptions, which are kind of written from the producer's point of view.
It's quite funny.
It seems so
in the process of it, how obviously who's nominated and who survives is purely based on luck. But it did really affect the gameplay and like how our characters felt about themselves and felt about each other. I love that. I never saw Jake. If it was like in actual player voting, I don't think Jake would have survived because he was really annoying.
It was fun to see how he evolved, because you had this sort of friendly, kindly grandpa figure, which obviously enhanced by the wonderful digital effects that you applied, which were amazing. We'll talk about that a bit more later. But then you just evolved into this little gremlin who just wrecked havoc and broke hearts and threw plates and whatever else it was you did. I was having a look at turn by turn posts that we kept during the course of the game, and Jake was up for eviction like almost every week. You
I
just
love that.
drew really bad cards, and yet somehow you survived.
But I think it makes sense that audiences at home watching reality TV would be voting for somebody who is making trouble,
Yeah, it did
rather
actually
than
end up
necessarily
making
someone they
sense.
think is a good person.
Oh man, I would have kept him in if it was a real program and you saw him sort of bringing that amount of chaos. I would have kept that man in. You could tell the producers maybe had like a little hand in keeping him around because they're like, oh,
Exactly.
viewing figures are really good when Jake does naughty things. Okay, great, let's get him in.
And Jake might not even have been in the show, right? Ellen, you were between two character concepts right up until
I was. There was another option on the table, which actually ended up being an NPC, which was Heidi, the sort of Henry's mate Heidi.
Henry's mate Heidi.
I honestly can't remember why I chose Jake, other than that there was more, I don't know, room for me to have fun with him, whereas, Heidi was a bit too, not that I am a Sloane Square girl, but a bit too me, whereas Jake is like total opposite of everything, and so much more. Like, I think, Matt, you said there was like potential there for this sort of slightly patronizing boomer-esque irritant in the house, and I just so much more fun.
That's right. I seem to remember your concern about Jake was how can he be annoying to the other housemates, because it's actually important in this game for everybody to have something about them that's a bit abrasive.
I forgot that conversation. We had to find that. I was worried about sort of him being too vulnerable as a sort of sweet old man, not wanting to make him this horrible creature that everybody hates. It felt a bit wrong.
Well, I think as well, the way you described him, he kind of came across as quite positive. So any sort of criticism that we'd have would just feel a lot like bullying, and like, oh, the reason we don't like him is because he's old, and that would be, not a nice avenue to explore in the game. So then we worked out that you're a bit like that Harry Enfield character that's sort of meddling and like, oh, you don't want to do it like that, and sort of getting in the way, right?
So that's the kind of the mundane side of Unreal, the Big Brother, the voting, the housemates playing off each other, the winning, the losing, the being evicted. But then Unreal also has this weirdness element to it. So we should be explicit. We can be explicit now that we're backstage about what the weirdness actually was, because obviously we described it in the videos through hints and visions and things that people experienced. But I think it was your idea.
Was it? Honestly, I can't remember. We've pulled so many.
Or it might have been an amalgam of some, but I'm pretty sure the original seed came from you, that this was a sentient house that feeds off conflict, was, I think, the core idea. And then we built on that to say that, like, when conflict happens and the house feeds, that allows it to like grow new bits.
That's right.
Or improve the tiling, or improve the wallpaper, or even grow entire new rooms.
Changing wall colours and the swimming pool and the garden.
Actually, I really enjoyed how that sort of came out during gameplay, that we each had a slightly, each week, different interpretation on what the house might be doing in reaction to all of the conflict. From like, oh, the taps are a little bit shinier, to there's a whole new swimming pool downstairs. I love that.
Yeah, the house worked in very strange and mysterious ways. But it was kind of, I think the idea came about from this idea of like it, I don't know, in typical Big Brother back in the day, the audience would feed off of conflict. That's what they liked. We were that sort of audience back in the mid-noughties that we just wanted to see conflict and shouting and people being horrible to each other. And so to sort of distill that and be like, well, what if the house was also a dick? What if the house also wanted people to be arguing and would like reward you with a lovely swimming pool or new tiling if everybody was just really mean to each other? And I think that really helped sort of drive forward our moments of like conflict. because I found it quite hard to really think up conflict when you guys weren't in the room. I think if you're in an RPG and you're all sitting in the same room and your characters are rubbing up against each other, you can do that improv thing of the yes-anding back and forth of like having arguments and like winding each other up and poking each other in the ribs. So to have
and also crucially, if you're in the same room, you can be checking in with people like, oh, is this okay to be doing? Which is harder to do when you're recording a video on your own.
Yeah,
I think there were a couple of occasions where we texted the group to say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Is anybody does anybody want to veto that?
Yes.
But for the most part, we were just kind of having to trust each other.
Yeah. Which you do, and we've all played, with Merely Roleplayers for years and years and years, and all know each other for a long time. So, like, never felt any issues with that. To be honest with you, I felt so disconnected from this character that I didn't care what was said because I sort of introduced him as being a bit of a douchebag. I was like, well, anything that comes my way is fine because we're supposed to be creating characters that rub each other up the wrong way, right? Rather than you play a game and you really craft a character and you fall in love with them and you think about everything and then someone says something nasty to them in a session, you're like, oh, you get all defensive. You're like, no, leave them alone. They're great.
Exactly.
In this, I'm like, yeah, let it come. This guy's a douche. It's fine.
Yeah. I think it was going back to the weirdness, it was a good one in terms of, because you always in this game end up with different people at different levels of awareness. So anything that's weird has to be there always has to be a way in which people could be denying that it's real, or like either denying that it's happening or denying that it was weird at all. So it worked really well for that. People can always be like, oh no, the taps have always been that shiny, or oh, the producers fixed it overnight. But then it's interesting how it interacted with some of the prompts that came up, because, and I'm sure this is true of whatever weirdness you pick, you'll have an idea in your head of how it's going to work, and then a prompt will come up that makes you think about it a kind of a different way. So there's things like, we've set up that the weirdness is that the house changes, and then we have prompts like someone is injured, marked, or changed, and it makes you kind of have to turn things around and go, oh wait, how is the house updating its tiling going to injure somebody?
I think about 3/4 of the way through, that's when we introduced like the big fight that happened, and the house is like, I'm bored of this. I'm going to start throwing plates, because I thought that was the moment I jumped up to the next weirdness level, because Henry was pretty like level 1 throughout the game. Like he was pretty okay and not aware of the weirdness. And so then when it jumped up, I realized I had to catch up with you guys. I was like, right, let's make it more physical. Let's throw some crockery around and make it a bit more. Yeah,
I love
like
that.
The house is really.
But I was going to actually ask you, Josh, like, how was it for you playing when you were sort of for quite a bit a level behind in the awareness?
Because I'd set Henry up as this character who thought he was intellectually superior over everybody else, and his whole spiel was, I'm going on, ironically, I want to deconstruct the very notion of what Big Brother's about, art school wanker. I think it made sense for him to be like, why is everybody acting really, really weird? I personally, as a player, really wanted to catch up and do some of the weird stuff and start, acting weird and joining in. So I was a bit sad when I was a bit left behind with the card draw. But then when it finally came about, and I was able to, my last video, put on a silly costume and talk to a penguin and just sort of really, really dial the weirdness up. Like, I was like, yes, I could join in. I could finally join in. Because it was quite interesting though, being the player on the outside and like being the Scully to everybody else's Mulder, and just sort of narrowing the eyes and being like, what's going on? I don't like this. That was quite refreshing. And because you guys dialed up the weirdness so much, I could.
It worked brilliantly, because then when you did break, you broke hard. Breakdown.
I was like, listen, there's only going to be like 3 videos left. I think the way it's written, you're supposed to do it a bit slower, because it's only when you get to like level 4 or whatever it is that you really go full Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the board behind you, trying to piece everything together. But I was like, no, we've only got 2 episodes left. I'm just going to ham it up a bit.
I think it would be an interesting game to play with more players, because I think because there are only 3 of us playing, that limits the number of turns, and when you limit the number of turns, that limits how close anybody's going to get to being like that top weirdness level. And also, I think if there are more players, then the game would be more resilient to people skipping turns if they don't have anything interesting to say or they just don't get around to it that week. Whereas I think we had the situation where if anybody sat a turn out, it felt like the videos were drying up almost. So we ended up doing like we extended turns to let people get their videos in rather than skipping. So I think it'd be quite a different game it would be really interesting to do with like a big cast of 6 or something.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. What I'd say with the weirdness is, and I think we discussed this in our own private chat, was we'd like to maximize weirdness or maximize card draw so that you are going to push towards, or maybe even having a thinner deck, taking a few cards, say taking out all the 2s and the 3s, for example, just so you've got more chance that you're going to bump into a spade. And
yeah, that's right.
Bring the chaos.
As written, you roll a die to decide how many cards you draw each turn. By about halfway through the game, we just decided we'd draw the maximum number of cards every turn, just to get as many interesting prompts as possible and to maximize the chances of all of our weirdness going up. Because I found that I've played one previous round of this game as a play test and found exactly the same thing, that if you're not drawing spades each time, you get that fear of missing out and that disappointment that the weirdness is happening and I'm not part of it.
Which is strange, isn't it? Because the way it's set up, if you're playing this as like a traditional board game or something, you'd want to avoid those spades coming out because it's a negative, right? Whereas in this game, you're missing out on an opportunity for weird role playing, and that's kind of what this game is all about. And so I found myself being like, come on, where are these damn spades? Or at least drawing high enough cards that I wouldn't then get evicted and have to deal with that.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, fun system, though.
What was the weirdness in your first playtest, Matt? I think you might have said, but...
Yeah. It was not actually that dissimilar. It was like the house is shifting around like the cube. So like not necessarily, with torture rooms and stuff, but like a door that opened onto a cupboard yesterday might open onto a bathroom today. And like the whole layout of the house just keeps shifting like a big puzzle box, revealing new rooms and that kind of thing. So yeah, in that sense of like different areas opening up and never being quite sure what's real in the house, it wasn't that dissimilar. So it'd be interesting to see a version where it's a bit more of like a traditional horror monster kind of thing, like a vampire.
I had almost half forgotten that the element of it being inspired or being fed off our conflict wasn't part of the actual core rules, because it felt so it'd be really interesting to see it played, or to play it where conflict isn't part of the kind of process. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the prompts still inspire conflict, but it wouldn't then necessarily feed into the weirdness side of the game. Yeah. One of the things I really enjoyed about this was just playing off each other, or even like in a sense one-upping each other. Because I think it took me a little while to settle into the idea of this being a visual, like a video series. I'm so used to just being audio only that for the first few videos I made, the only real concession I made to it being a visual medium was like sitting in different ways on the chair kind of thing. But then I think it was Josh, when you did, it was either, I can't remember which one of these came first. You had a video where you had a like a tuba grip bandage on, and the real turning point was the one that you did in the laundry basket.
Oh yeah.
When I was like, oh yeah, it's visual. We can do like costumes, props, makeup, like different locations. And that, like, just you doing that made me feel like I wanted to up my game, and I started doing, plasters and injuries and that kind of thing. And not just in terms of that, but also in terms of like the story elements we were throwing in. I liked that almost competitive playing off each other, which I didn't expect to have when we weren't
especially
at the table.
when it's all being done remotely. And obviously, Matt you receive the videos and then upload them, it was always a very exciting moment when like we'd get a message on the WhatsApp group or whatever saying video uploaded. Like, what have they done this time? I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, this is what happens. This is what happens when you let drama graduates play this sort of game, because we're like, ooh, costumes, makeup, locations, fun. Do you know what I mean? It's not just. Yeah, you're right. Trying to like push that limit when you're still setting the boundaries of like sitting in the same seat, in the same position for the sake of continuity. You are limited to sort of where you're sitting, but then to be like, oh, brilliant, I'll just dress up a bit, or like I said, I'll put makeup on. Or to be fair, the granddaddy of it all was Ellen's wonderful digital makeup. So like, when I first saw that first video, I was like, okay, right. The bar has been set.
It was mainly for me actually, because like, I don't know, to get into character. There was just the opportunity to pop a filter on. I was like, oh, there he is. That's what he looks like. Yeah. It did.
I think it really helps you with the character as well. Like it really, when you had it and when you had your little grandpa jumper on, suddenly you just fell in and you had the mannerisms.
The worrying thing about that is that Jake has also sort of become a little alter ego accidentally. Because what you said before we started recording, you pointed out we started this in April. So these characters have sort of been with us on and off for months and months, that I will occasionally find myself slipping into Jake, like just in ordinary conversation. And it's like, oh God, oh no, what have I done?
Oh my God, we've created a monster. Do you start
Not
and end
quite,
every sort
but
of
I will
salutation
repeat myself.
with
I do
afternoon?
repeat myself.
Is that the spiel?
Like, oh no.
Anybody got any, before we wrap up, anybody got any kind of fave moments, fave bits, or fave kind of NPCs? We haven't talked much about them yet.
I was going to mention the NPCs. It was really nice running a system where we all, so for the benefit of the viewers, we all came up with one NPC each, and then I think the one that was left over was, I think Matt maybe picked up that one. But the way they generate NPCs is that you come up with, I think, maybe a couple of sentences to describe them, and then what is it? Sorry,
you have like an interesting thing about them and an annoying thing about them.
Yeah.
And
so again, the annoying thing that feeds into the whole idea of conflict and driving forward the story. But again, you're not sitting there writing pages and pages of backstory and describing their looks, their height, their weight, the hair color, all that sort of stuff. It's like, what did we have here? Ruth, annoying thing, never puts anything back where it goes. Interesting thing, has been arrested 7 times, and that's it. And so that really helps with the improv to build on it and be like, right, why do I like this character? Why do I not like this character? And I was certainly sort of
to add more details in play as well.
Yeah, right. Because those details come to light. But those details come to light during the course of recording the video. Like, we didn't plan for them to have done certain things like off camera. It all came from our own video. So then when someone says something interesting about Thora, then the rest of us are like, oh, okay, I'm going to try and pick it up.
She ended up being my favourite. We each came up with one NPC, and then we came up with Thora together. Like, we added a detail each. And she ended up being, I think she survived the longest as well.
I think she came 4th, didn't she? Because there was the sort of the civil war in the house going between the Sloane Rangers and then like the old men and Thora. It was very much a sort of 2 against 3 scenario. And then, to be honest with you, when Heidi got evicted, it absolutely broke my heart.
That is a question. How old is Malcolm? Because I feel like Henry's like, you're all so old. But in my head, Malcolm and Jake was a great deal older than him. But what about you? What did you actually think?
I imagined Malcolm being like late 30s, so older than me, but not old.
So quite close to our
I quite like that.
Oh, the way you played him, I thought he was sort of early.
But it does actually kind of work with Henry's character, that he's so too cool for school that anybody that is outside of his little bracket is an old man. I just really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think it's to do with how Malcolm acted as well. When he met Malcolm was very sort of shy and still in sort of maths teacher mode. That sort of all right, Grandad, step back. Even though there was probably 10 years difference between them. How did you find playing Malcolm, Matt? Because you started quite sort of meek and you weren't really sure where you were. I don't know. The character was very sort of blending into the background, but then got slowly more mad, deranged, and violent at one point, I think.
Well, I think I jumped a weirdness level right from turn one, so that kind of changed how I was going to play it, because it. I think my original concept for him was like, he wants to be the peacemaker. He's a teacher. He's used to dealing with kids running around and throwing paint at each other. And he wants to be the adult in the room who stops everybody from fighting. But obviously that gives him that, like, while he is trying to present himself as the adult in the room, he's actually being very patronizing to everybody. So can create conflict that way. But like, I had a couple of turns of, oh, this is how I tried to break up this conflict, and I had a stern word with this person, and why is everybody being like this? And then it was weirdness, and it was like, oh, the wall opened up like a splitting sausage skin, and I walked into a strange dark room. So seeing like this person who sees himself as being very mature suddenly having to immediately descend into just not dealing with that stuff particularly well was quite fun.
But it was quite a nice arc for him, because then at the end of the game he'd found love and was very, very happy.
Or did he? I mean, decided that love was the answer, realized that what I didn't ever get to the full, like, completely aware of everything that's happening level, but got to the level where he was like, okay, the conflict is part of it. The house wants us to argue. Therefore, the response, the way to fight it, is that we have to all be in love.
Love wins.
I think came off a prompt. It was like two people in the house are all over each other. Maybe you're one of them. It's sickening. I think it was part of the wording.
Yeah, because when you drew that prompt, there were only 3 of us left in the house, right? Yes. So it couldn't even be with an NPC.
Yeah, the timing was impeccable. I couldn't.
What was
take
so
the
lovely about
way
that
out
is
and
that
romance
I think the
NPC.
turn after that video, I drew I can't remember the exact wording, but the very, very similar prompt of 2 housemates are in love. And I was like, well, I'm going to go full hog into this then.
It was lovely. It was so unexpected. I nearly spat my tea out when I saw that video.
Oh God, yes, the spaghetti sauce.
Brilliant.
Any further before we wrap up?
No, just to say that I really enjoyed myself. Yeah,
it was really fun.
Yeah, I had a really good time as well, and I feel like this is something we could potentially do another round of at some point. Potentially, if we can get more people involved.
100%. Put some faces to names for the Merely squad.
Yeah. So watch this space.
Thank you,
and thank you very much for playing.
Yeah.
Thank you for running it.
Well, I mean, we all ran this one. And thank you all very much for watching.